sorry. Did I break your concentration?
Somewhere between science and superstition.
We have such sights to show you.
Strange Eons. Welcome to Strange Eons Radio. That's Eric Morgard over there.
Yes, it is.
That's Vanessa Williams over there.
Hello.
I'm Kelly Young. We're all still in lockdown, so we're recording this via Zoom. You may hear my seagull friends on the outside. Doesn't look like we get a bird from Vanessa this time.
No, I'm back out on the island, which means, unfortunately, worse internet. So for anybody who's watching on the YouTube channel, there might be a few pixelated moments. But yeah, so no birds, just me in the wilderness of the trees. We did have a tree fall yesterday, so that was fun.
Like next to the place, or?
Yeah, on my property, which is like next to ours. It's like just an empty lot, and my mom watched one of my trees just fall over.
Wow, big tree, or?
I think it was, I don't know because I didn't see it, but I did hear it. So
loud enough that you could hear then. So
oh yeah,
that's a big tree then.
Yeah, so somewhere out there, I said I should get a discount for my property because it came with like some crappy trees.
You got the chainsaw.
It's true. It's true. I can grab it. I can get wood out of that. That evens it all out.
Hey, I don't think it was last episode, the episode before, Vanessa, you were telling us about Onward. You had said something about the creature, and I said it was a chimera. And even though we talked about it last week, I did mention that it's the manticore.
Yes, it is the manticore. Exactly. It's funny because I thought that later, and then I was like, oh, well, who cares? But I'm glad that it's stuck in your gut, and you're like, wait, no.
Those D&D nerds cared. Trust me.
Yeah.
angry.
I got a couple of texts.
Sure.
We're also all wearing new headphones and mics and everything, so this might sound a little different on this episode too. I'd love to get everybody's feedback on how they think this sounds.
Yeah, please.
So, with all that being said, what have you guys been up to?
I have a strange note. If you might go to our YouTube channel and look at the Atomic episode we did, it looks like somebody who is all about atomic batteries made a big, giant comment about how they work. That's one of our YouTube comments.
Fantastic.
Beautiful.
Plus you just looked at the title there and you didn't actually listen to us, did you?
You know what? No such thing as bad publicity, right?
No, that was great.
used to be there was a difference between being famous and infamous, and now all you care about is just being. You just got to have people know about you. So
yeah, it's true. I feel like we surpassed that Andy Warhol. Everybody gets 15 minutes of fame or whatever,
right.
And now we're in the age of try and scrape for all fame at all moments in every direction you can.
Well, I watched a really cool movie, you guys, and you're going to want to rent this one. It is called The Wretched. It's just now available on Prime. It's a cheap rental. I think it's $2.99. And it is a mix of I'm going to do the pitch meeting thing. It's the Hole in the Ground meets Fright Night. Did either of you guys see Hole in the Ground?
Nice, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's about a kid who is positive that this creepy fucking tree witch has moved in and taken over his neighbors. And the Fright Night part doesn't work as well as the Hole in the Ground part does. So just, be aware that as you're watching it going, I don't like this part. I didn't like that part either, but I loved the rest of it. And I thought it was well worth the $3. It was a really cool movie.
I did another of the let's go back and watch crazy 90s movies. Mm-hmm. Face Off.
Oh, yes. Face Off.
You know what? I love that you did this because I did that a couple weeks back.
What? Oh, my God. Everybody's watching Face Off.
Nicolas Cage, man.
Oh, my God. When he shows up with, I only saw it for the first time last year. He shows up with a priest thing and he's like, hello, everybody. Oh my God. It's so good.
What did you think, Eric? Was this just like a second viewing, or is this an old favorite?
I've seen it more than once, but it's been a long time. John Woo does not age real well as an action director, at least in this one. Because I think part of it, the problem is too, so many people latched on the visual brilliance he had at that time and turned it into cliches. I also think, Dean and I were talking, it's like, I think this is Nicolas Cage's, like one of his, take his super low budget stuff out of the mix, one of his first batshit crazy roles.
Yeah.
He's fun to watch in it. John Travolta's weird in it. I felt bad for John Travolta at the end because they put all the fat back in him too when they put his face back on. It's like, dude, you could have left that off. But
I almost think that John Woo's style was old by the time that came out too. Yeah. So it was almost like he was kind of making fun of his own style.
I could see that because the movie is so ridiculous that
I mean, there's no reason for the doves in the church at the end.
So weird.
But it's still entertaining. It is entertaining as all hell. It's a lot of fun to watch. It's not. I'm sure I can see myself at the time in my 20s going, "Wow, this is awesome fun!" But doesn't age real well.
Castor Troy, right? Wasn't that his name in this one? See, I told you I just watched it. Yeah. You tell me. The most unbelievable thing isn't that they shaved 40 pounds off of John Travolta and made him look just like Nicolas Cage. The most unbelievable thing is they drop him into prison so he can talk to his brother. And he says like one thing wrong about the medication the brother uses, and immediately the brother is like on total suspicion. You're not my brother. Now you're just sitting at a bar with your brother, and he orders a drink that he normally doesn't order. Do you immediately give him the stink eye and go, "Who the fuck are you?"
I mean, I do that all the time.
Is your face replaced with somebody else?
Yeah, that part seemed a little hard for me to take. I was like, I think he's jumping to the right conclusion, like immediately with no basis.
That's just some really good writing there, Kelly. I don't know what you're talking about.
I guess so.
Oh, well, I watched almost an equally weird film, Serenity, the very recent one with Matthew McConaughey.
Oh, okay.
I think it's Matthew McConaughey. Yeah, I think. Sorry. It's a weird movie. Yeah, it's weird because they set this film up as this odd, through all the trailers, they make it look like this kind of crime drama where a beautiful woman, Anne Hathaway, like shows up on a dock to this like little out in the middle of nowhere sea town and asks Matthew McConaughey to like off her husband for her. And that's how they advertise it. And you're like, oh shit, like she's going to offer her money. It's actually like a fantasy film or like a sci-fi film. And so a lot of people are like, really, like it has a weird twist. And it's not, I don't think that it's really even a twist because it happens probably about halfway through. But it's just like, man, if anybody went and saw this movie because they were looking for a crime drama, I would be mad too. Like this movie bombed and I think they just kind of deserved it.
It's kind of ballsy to name your film Serenity and have it be a sci-fi film when there is also already a very, very popular sci-fi movie called Serenity.
So true. So very true. This is another query, but I guess the boat is named Serenity, so you got to call it Serenity for literally no reason.
You really could have named the boat something else. Unless it's so low budget that was the actual boat they were shooting on, and they were like, well, what are you going to do?
Oh, no, it's an insane, I think it's a pretty darn big budget, or at least a medium to big budget. It's got some big people in it. And actually, if I looked at it only as a sci-fi film, I would say it's actually pretty enjoyable. So I don't know, like I'd only heard it was trash. So I was surprised that it was not as trash as I thought it was.
McConaughey, I mean, he rarely disappoints, right? At least his part of the movie.
Oh no, he did great. All the acting is great. I think everybody was just mad about the story. So, and I was like, oh my God, it's actually a genre I like. I'm going to pay a lot more attention now.
That reminds me of one I saw a long time ago. It's not quite in our range, so I'll speak on it quickly. The $1 Million Baby film, Clint Eastwood's film from a long time ago.
Right.
Annoyed the crap out of me because I thought it was going to be like a Rocky themed sort of film, because the advertising didn't really talk about how 20 minutes into the movie she paralyzes herself and that's the rest of the film. Like, this is not a boxing movie at all.
Yeah, it was definitely promoted as a boxing movie.
Yeah, I never saw that film, and I still thought, I didn't know. I mean, I knew that there's like she paralyzes herself, but I thought that was in the last 1 minute or something.
Jesus, that's a downer ending, Vanessa.
Yeah.
Fade out.
Everybody talked about how it's depressing, so I was like, okay.
Yes, it
Yeah.
is.
Wow, that sucks.
I also watched, I'm going to just mention 2 movies really quick because I watched them on Shudder and I wasn't sure what to expect. Blood Quantum, which is a zombie movie that has an entire Native American cast, and the zombie outbreak happens, and for some reason Native Americans are immune to it. And so it's got a weird twist, and it's really well done. I didn't know any of the actors or anybody involved, but I thought it was, you know me, I hate zombie movies, and I probably come in and say every time I like a zombie movie that I hate zombie movies, but I will only talk about a zombie movie if I think it's worth talking about. And this one I thought was interesting. And then also Z, the letter Z is on Shudder, and it's about a boy who's got an imaginary friend who, of course, turns out to be more than just imaginary and begins terrorizing the family. And it's pretty by the books, but I thought it had some effectively creepy moments. And then in the third act, it turned super dark. And I was like, wow, I did not see it going in this direction. So I like that one. Both free on Shudder if you've got Shudder.
Nice. Got a quick news note and then another thing I've been watching. See, Swamp Thing got picked up by CW.
No, I did not see that.
Yep. Yeah, they came out today. The news thing's like, not a lot of details, and I'm sure it's going to be quite different as done by the CW than it would be.
Well, I wonder. I mean, I imagine they'll try and hold on to that cast, right?
I hope so, yeah.
And half that cast had come from CW shows.
Good point. True.
I was going to say, where was it from before? Because it almost has a CW feel to it, to an extent. Was it A&E or FX or what?
DC, the streaming.
It was on the
service.
DC universe.
Oh, okay.
Now that makes me feel bummed that they rushed that ending onto the end of that first season because they felt like they had to end it somehow.
Maybe they'll ignore the ending, like
I
in
hope so.
season 8 of Gilmore Girls or whatever, where they're like, nope, didn't happen. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
And one other quick thing, and then I think I'm rounded up, so we'll leave it to you guys. But started watching a show that I'd been recommended for a long time. It's a sitcom kind of thing, but Schitt's Creek on Netflix.
I have been hearing so much about it, and it has such a bad name, and I hate all the trailers that I've been avoiding it, but I keep hearing it's good. So is it?
Freaking hilarious.
Really?
It's it's a very much fish out of water story. A supremely rich group of people lose all their money, and then years and years earlier, the father had bought this town as a joke for his son, and that's the only asset they have left, so they go live in this town.
Oh.
It's fun. It's closest cousin I could think of to a movie or show is Arrested Development in its tone and style.
Interesting. Well, I'll have to spin up an episode of that and give it a try. If I'm willing to give Upload a try.
I'll put in my 2 cents here because I watched about 4 episodes.
Yeah.
Didn't work for you, huh?
It really did not, and I'm a huge fan of Arrested Development. I didn't get that feeling from it, and also I'm just a huge fan of Eugene Levy and the actor who plays his wife, who I can't remember her name.
She's in Beetlejuice.
And SCTV. They both came from SCTV. Yeah. And I was very disappointed with it. I didn't get what the hype was about, but I do know that there is massive hype around this. So this is one of those ones that I just don't get.
Does it have a similar humor and like maybe even filmmaking team to like Spinal Tap?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
All right.
No, it's not an
You're
improvisational show.
Yeah, you're thinking of like Christopher Guest movies that start both
I
of
was
them.
exactly.
No.
Okay, I saw like a little sneak peek thing that I was like, oh, that looks a little Christopher Guesty. Well, the last movie I'll mention, I've seen like a million things this week, but I'm kind of catching up with you guys at this point. So I did see, and I won't talk much about it, but Ford v Ferrari, and I saw Sweetheart. So I'm getting there.
That's two ends of the spectrum right there.
Yeah, like I very much like to pair happy. Like I like watching bouncing between genres, so it's kind of like eating sushi and then getting the wasabi and then eating sushi, like or the ginger. Clear your senses. Ginger, not wasabi.
I think most people are aware that Ford v Ferrari is Oscar quality. What did you think of Sweetheart? And Eric, have you seen Sweetheart
I
yet?
don't think so. It doesn't sound familiar.
On Netflix?
No, I haven't. Look it up here.
You know, I actually really enjoyed the monster in Sweetheart. I thought that was kind of a neat setup.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I love that she had so many resources, and I was only really frustrated when like her boyfriend comes and we learn more about like her backstory.
Yeah.
Because that's when I was like, oh, this character is kind of not as cool as I thought she was, and like the other actors were so crap that it made it like I just didn't want I just didn't want to be in that world with them. I was like, oh, now it's so lower quality because you guys suck so hard.
Wow. I don't remember thinking that, but I did think that the creature design was neat. I thought she was a pretty good actor. I hate the title.
Yeah, well, and it only exists because of one line where her boyfriend talks down to her. I was like, why did you call it this?
Yeah.
This has nothing to do with the movie.
Sounds like my reaction to that one with the people that are stuck out on the yacht. And I didn't like any of those characters. And after I talked about it, suddenly I saw all over the place. People were like, oh, this is so good. It's like, okay.
Talking about Harpoon, I think.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Harpoon.
I still haven't seen it based on your evaluation. I just want to throw one last thing out there because I thought it was so neat. I've been reading a lot of digital comics and catching up on older stuff. And you guys are familiar, well, Eric is, Vanessa, maybe not, familiar of the supervillain Carnage.
Yes.
Marvel Comics. So Jerry Conway, who is comic book royalty, he wrote Superman and all that stuff. He wrote I think it's 16 issue long Carnage solo comic that has a beginning, middle, end. And if you, like me, love the old Tomb of Dracula series from the 70s, it's just like that, in that Carnage is this horrible serial killer who's got hold of the Darkhold, which is Marvel's version of the Necronomicon. And there is a team of people who have been put together to try and find him, and they're on his trail. And it's really, really cool. It's really gory. It's got some really neat things in it, and it's super, super Lovecraftian. So I've just put
that sounds amazing.
And it was just called Carnage. It was written by Jerry Conway. I don't remember the artist's name, but the art was gorgeous. So well worth getting. I got it in 3 volumes, 3 of the trade paperback, when I don't know what you call it, when it's just a collected 6-issue run or something like that.
Yeah,
so,
it's I think it's a trade. Yeah, and singles are the single ones.
Yeah, but when you're reading them digital, I'm like, do you call it a trade or do you just call it a file? I don't know.
A series of JPEGs.
It was great, and Eric, I know you'd love it.
Sounds good. Yeah, especially
sounds awesome.
Tomb of Dracula. Okay.
Anything else, guys, or shall we take a little break and come back after these messages?
We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Dr. Dreadful, and this is the Dr. Dreadful Food Lab. Makes lots of gross things, and then you eat them. Dr. Dreadful's monster skin.
are back. Hey guys, this time it was my choice, and I picked Science Experiments Gone Bad. And so, because I picked it, I get to go first. You have to listen to me.
Go.
Fine.
It's Kelly's turn to shine. I waffled between a couple of movies, and I'll probably talk about the other movie right after this very briefly. But the movie I picked for this was from 1980, Altered States.
In the basement of one of the country's leading medical schools, Dr. Edward Jessup, candidate for a Nobel Prize, is conducting the most dangerous experiment in the history of science. And the subject of the experiment is himself.
Ask him what kind of an experience I can expect. What happens during these blackout periods is you get the feeling of phenomenal acceleration, like you're being shot out over millions, billions of years. Time simply obliterates.
You guys are shooting off with an untested drug that stacks up in the brain and works in the nucleus of the cell, and you don't call that dangerous?
I'm asking you to put the experiment off until we understand a little more in order to minimize the risk.
Wait.
I'm really frightened. We could be screwing around with his whole genetic structure. Now, how do we stop this?
We've got millions of years stored away in that computer bank we call our minds. We have got trillions of dormant genes in us, our whole evolutionary past. Perhaps I've tapped into that.
He may be on to something that is beyond our own comprehension. Now, because I believe him, I want this thing stopped.
The hell was that? You okay?
If you love me, Eddie, get fired!
Altered States.
It had a budget of, let me look at this here. Oh boy. I feel like Vanessa here. I can't read my writing. Had a budget of 15 million and a box office of about 20 million. Rotten Tomatoes critic score is 84%. Audience has it at 72%. It was directed by Ken Russell, who has 76 credits. But what I know him from best is The Devils, Tommy, and that's about it. Between The Devils, Tommy, and Altered States, that's the only Ken Russell movies I've really watched.
Wow.
Am I missing anything, Eric?
Nothing I can think of off the top of my head.
He sounds very famous. He sounds like somebody who's made other movies.
76 credits. That's what I mean. He's made a ton of movies. He's very artsy fartsy, and I've just kind of passed him by.
And he did that really kind of terrible movie about hookers as a response to, wasn't that him? As a response to Pretty Woman.
Oh no! But that sounds like something he'd do.
He did I think that was him.
Well, you're looking that up.
Hookers? What? Yeah. Okay.
I'll just mention that he passed away in 2011.
Aw.
It was written by Paddy Chayefsky from his novel Altered States. He actually disowned this film, not liking the way the actors said his words. But it should be noted that the dialogue is almost word for word from the book. He just didn't like the way the actors were delivering the lines. So I guess you would call him difficult.
Yeah.
It stars William Hurt. Now, William Hurt is one of our generation's finest actors. The Big Chill, Broadcast News, Children of a Lesser God. He also plays General Ross in the Hulk and Avenger movies. My very favorite role that he did was in an episode of Nightmares and Dreamscapes, which was the short-run Stephen King TV series, and he was in one called Battleground, and it's almost a completely dialogue-free episode. He says like maybe one word at the beginning, and then he has to fight these army men toys that are attacking him in his apartment. It's a fucking great episode.
Whoa.
That's a good one.
It also stars Blair Brown. I won't have as much to say about her because I did not recognize her at all. She was in Close Encounters, but I don't know what part. She was in 2010, same thing, and 116 credits, mostly TV. She was in Seinfeld. No. I'm sorry.
You are doing a Vanessa moment.
She's got 100 credits, mostly TV, and the latest was Orange is the New Black.
Oh,
and
okay.
she plays Judy King. That must have been one of the later seasons. I stopped watching that after season 2.
Yeah.
I think I got through season 3, but it wasn't worth it.
And then
we paused there for a moment. Ken Russell did Lair of the White Worm is actually pretty good.
Oh, that's right.
And Whore was the movie he did in 1991 as a response to Pretty Woman, where he said, "That's not what it's like for hookers on the street. Here's my movie." And it looks like for about the next 10 years, he did nothing but TV movies because that movie did not do well at all.
Well, it's interesting because this is the movie that really killed his upward climb.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. He pissed a lot of people off with this, starting with producers, Patty Chayefsky, William Hurt.
Really?
The guy I was talking about then after Blair was Bob Balaban, who was in Close Encounters 2010 and 116 credits. He might be best remembered by younger people from Seinfeld. He was the TV executive. They were pitching the idea of the show that was about nothing too all the time. So this movie starts out, it's the late 60s, and William Hurt is Edward. He's a brilliant graduate student who is conducting experiments on himself in an isolation chamber. He meets this other whiz kid and falls crazy in love with her. He starts pulling her into his plans, which include, well, I've got it written down here. He thinks that this is quote, our other states of consciousness are as real as our waking states. So that if you are dreaming, you're not having a dream in your head, you're experiencing something in a different world, basically. And to this point, he's just driven to prove this. This gal that he meets, Blair Brown, he has a very creepy scene with her where he comes onto her very quickly. She agrees very quickly, and then they have sex on the couch in the apartment she's sharing with somebody else. And it's such a uncomfortable bit of dialogue and everything, but you'll forgive it all because it is such a beautiful shot afterwards. They've got like a wood fire going, and she's lounging on the couch, and he is sitting on the floor with his arm covering, most of her bits that you wouldn't want to be able to show. And they're both naked, and the firelight is just kind of playing off of them while he's giving her this talk about how, basically that quote I gave you, how he believes that there are other worlds than these. It's a really amazing shot. It then doesn't tell you, but you have to kind of follow very closely. They've been married for 7 years. And you figured this out because they've got 2 daughters now, both around that age, and they're on the verge of divorce. Edward hears about this group of Mexican Indians who do what appears to me to be kind of an ayahuasca ceremony, but we didn't know anything about that in the 80s, so they called it something else, but it's clearly based on the ayahuasca ceremony that a lot of people have done that I have always wanted to try. So he goes to Mexico, and he takes this potion that they make, and like immediately goes into a crazy vision with his wife, and this gigantic lizard shows up in it, and there's all this mind-melting LSD imagery and everything. I should stop here. Have either of you seen Altered States?
Yes.
Okay.
Long time, but yes.
Okay. So yeah, there's this crazy imagery, and the photography on this imagery, it's all really neat because for the most part, these are all very practical effects. So this gigantic lizard comes up, and then there's a shot of his wife who's naked and kind of prone in front of him, looking up at him, and then the two of them just stare at each other, and then they turn to sand, and then the wind blows and erodes them to nothing. And it's like one of these things where you're like, I fucking bet this movie is a blast on drugs. I should also say this was my first time watching it in total. I have only seen parts of this, so I will say I enjoyed the fuck out of this movie. So he comes out of the dream he thinks he's having, and he finds out that the lizard at least was real, and he killed it in his dream. He split it open. There's this gigantic monitor lizard, or some kind of dragon or something lying on the ground in front of him, and it's dead. And he's sure that no, they're lying. I couldn't have done that. I didn't. I wouldn't be able to do that. So this is where it gets really crazy. He's so impressed with this drug they gave him that he thinks, you know what? I had these crazy visions in an isolation chamber. I had these crazy visions on this drug. What would happen? I take this drug while I'm in the isolation chamber. And what happens is fucked up. So he starts having these crazy visions. So in the isolation chamber, he's got two people who are helping him with this test, and he's floating. For those of you who don't know what an isolation chamber is, it's a big, huge, I guess, metal canister that you're floating in air or in water, and you're weightless, and it's soundproof and everything. So you're just stuck in there with your thoughts. It's dark, and you're not feeling the weight of your body, and it allows you. I've heard a lot of people find it a very peaceful thing. A lot of people say it'll drive you nuts if you've got anxiety because all you can do is think about shit. This one is stylistically set up to be standing up instead of lying down. And for some reason, that makes it even creepier somehow, because there is a little porthole where you can see into and see his face. You wouldn't be able to do that in a real isolation chamber. But he's also wired so that he can tell the people outside what is going on. And he starts telling them about how he's on the plane with his tribe. There's a goat, and he's going to kill the goat. He's going after the goat and all this stuff. And then he starts screaming, and they're like, God, get him out of there, get him out of there. They pull him out, and he's covered in blood. And he also can't speak, and he's motioning wildly to get them something to write on. And he basically writes, I need to get my neck x-rayed before I reconstitute. Which I think is amazing, because they then rush him to get x-rays, and his neck is not shaped like the current species of Homo sapien. It's got some weird shit on it that we had evolved away from. So at some point he had regressed, and actually his body had regressed with his hallucination, vision, whatever you want to call it. This just proves everything that he wants it to prove. So he goes further and further into this. He's now pulled his wife into this. She's more worried for him, but you can tell they're kind of falling back in love with each other, because she's realizing his intensity and his passion is not unfounded. He's onto something. So she helps him. And in this amazing scene, he goes even further back, and he starts becoming like primordial ooze or something like that. So before I get any further into this, I'm going into spoiler territory. So if you want to like fast forward, 15 or 30 seconds or anything, I'm just going to tell you how this ends. His wife reaches into this swirling vortex of primordial ooze, and she is able to kind of grab his essence and pull him back into being a human again, and the ooze and everything just goes away, and it's fucking a really neat effect. Then they take him home, and he's like basically in shock, and the other two doctors are like, oh my god, we got to do this again. Well, one of them is. The other doctor is like, I never want to do anything like this again. And the wife is trying to comfort him, and he starts now he can't control it. He starts reverting back to different versions of human and all this stuff, until a very, very crazy ending where he's like some kind of bizarre energy signal that his wife like tries to help him with, and by touching him, she becomes part of this energy signal, and he sees her dissolving away, and that's enough for him to smash Take On Me style against the walls and come back to being human, and he's able to bring her back to it. I just gotta say, I fucking loved everything about this movie except for that very cheesy computer effect at the end. And this is 1980, brand new computer effects. They were trying something different. It didn't quite work just because all of the other things did work. I mean, there was some really great stuff about him transforming into like a caveman monkey type thing at one point, and he gets out of the chamber and terrorizes the guards in the building and breaks out of the building, and then has a scene very reminiscent of American Werewolf in London, where he wakes up in a zoo back as his human self again. What a cool fucking movie. I think the reason I didn't like this when I was 11 years old was because I could not grasp a fucking thing they were talking about. But this time I loved it. I thought it was a very complicated movie that you have to pay a lot of attention to. There's just a ton of philosophy being thrown around and all that stuff that when I was 11 years old, I just wanted monsters and shit like that. A little bit of trivia on this thing. So it's William Hurt's first film role.
Oh, wow.
His first film role, feature-length film role. He had done some TV stuff like that, but this is his first feature film role. Ken Russell was not the first choice for this. He wasn't the second choice. He was not the 26th choice. He was the 27th choice to be the director for this film.
Whoa! Why did nobody want to do this movie?
Well, after Spielberg, Kubrick, Sidney Pollack, and Robert Wise, and Orson Welles, and 21 other directors turned it down.
Jeez.
There is a really crazy scene that is a vision that takes place in hell. And it's a big Dante's Inferno scene. And I was like, holy shit, this is amazing. And it looks super familiar to me. And then when I did the research, I found out why. Did you guys ever see Dante's Inferno with Spencer Tracy?
Mm-mm.
Oh, you would both fucking love this movie. It's awesome. In just its depiction of hell. But they pulled footage from that movie to use in his vision. It's some pretty cool shit. And then I just thought this was an interesting little factoid. William Hurt spends 40% of the movie nude.
That sounds familiar. I remember that part.
So that's my choice. Altered States.
The part I remember the most is that bit in the hall you were talking about, where he's banging himself against the walls to try to normalize himself or whatever.
It was such a striking scene. I had to think that when they were doing the video for Take On Me, that had to be what they were trying to pull off. And they actually pull it off better. So
I'm so glad you like this movie, Kelly. Like I loved it when I saw it. It's been a little while now, but at the time I was prepping for a film where they were going to use some like sensory deprivation stuff, and actually had to like try out sensory deprivation.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
How? Oh, you don't sound like you love it.
Everyone has like their own experiences, and some people have visions, and some people have like total like meditative experiences. Mine was literally like being in hell. I hated it.
Wow.
I hated it so much. And I finally burned myself in there and managed to like crawl my way out. But
wow, you burned yourself in water?
Well, it has to get warm somehow. And at one point I got a little like, well, how does it get warm in here? And I started feeling around. And at the top, because most of the ones that I know of, you lay down completely. So you're flat. So the actual device thing that you're in is flat. And so when I touched the top, that's where the heating coil was. Oh. Yeah, so it wasn't like super, super hot, like, ow, I'm like completely singed off my fingers, but it was like, oh crap, like I shouldn't have done that. And so when I went back down, I splashed the water, which is heavily diluted salt water. And so salt got on my face and on my eyes, and my face started itching. I like scratching. And it only gets worse and worse and worse. So like at that point I was like, I'm done. But yeah, like I will say the movie was 100 times better than my personal experience. And I 100% recommend this film. It was crazy. I remember it being completely crazy and a lot of talking.
Yeah, it is a lot of talking. That's probably what turned me off back then. I waffled between this and Brainstorm. which is a movie that I also don't know if I had ever finished before. And I watched it and I fucking fell in love with Natalie Wood all over again. And Christopher Walken is amazing and all this. And I thought they were really similar kind of movies in that there was this experimenting going on. And then at the end, there's this kind of redemption through love and all this stuff. And I was like, boy, both of these have really super positive endings, which I was not expecting from either of them. So I just thought that Altered States was the stronger and weirder movie. Okay, enough about me.
All right. So my pick, I went with a film that I'd never seen before, but I've heard a lot about. And I've always been a little bit curious, but it's funny because every time I've ever mentioned it to somebody, they've been like, oh. So I went with the 1995 picture, Species.
In January, a message from an extraterrestrial source was picked up at the Parkes Observatory in Australia. A new sequence of DNA, friendly instructions on how to combine it with ours.
Its growth is amazing.
The decision was made to terminate the experiment.
Breaking out!
She escaped. We have a serious emergency on our hands. I want a team to track her. Hunt her down.
You created a monster, now you want us to kill it.
We decided to make it female so that it would be more docile and controllable.
More docile and controllable, huh? Well, I guess you guys don't get out much.
She wants to have a baby.
She'll kill anyone that gets in her way.
I wouldn't hurt you. Yes, you would. Just don't know it yet.
She could have a dozen babies. She could lay 1,000 eggs.
Something's wrong.
She's here!
Oh, God.
So it's available now. I believe it's on Amazon Prime is how I checked it out. It had a budget of $35 million and actually brought in $113.3 million worldwide. So it really killed it. Yeah, it was big hit. It's got a 43% critic and 31% audience on Rotten Tomatoes. So people definitely hate it. The director is Roger Donaldson, who did Cocktail and Dante's Peak. So kind of interesting guy. Right after this, he went on to do 13 Days. He also did in 1977, he did a movie called Sleeping Dogs. He's from Australia, and it was the first movie made in Australia in like 15 years.
Wow.
And it was the first ever movie shown from Australia in America. So kind of like a crazy big deal for him to end up as such a good, well-known director. The writer, amazing, Dennis Feldman, who wrote The Golden Child, which I grew up loving, and then went on to write Species, Species 2, Virus, Species 3, and Species The Awakening.
Is Virus that one with Jamie Lee Curtis?
I can't remember. I just was like, I remember it being cheesy, right?
Well, if it's that one, yeah, it's bad. But he really became like a sci-fi horror writer.
Yeah, but that's kind of it. Like, he doesn't have a lot of other credits. Like, he kind of has a pretty short-lived life as far as all of that. Then we've got the actors behind this picture. It's kind of interesting because you've got the lead actresses playing this character named Syl, who's some kind of genetic mashup of something. Natasha Henstridge.
Yep.
This was really her first major role. Like she'd done, I think, two smaller things. And then essentially this was like really her like coming out piece. Then she went on to also do Species 2. She was in Ghosts of Mars. She was in Whole Nine Yards, and then had a little period of time where she was doing a lot of really bad rom-coms that have just kind of like fallen away off of the books of history. And now she mostly does a lot of TV stuff I'd never heard of and stuff that I have heard of. But right now she's in a show called Digstown, which I don't know much about, but she's beautiful, so I'm sure she could do whatever she wants. Michelle Williams, this was 100% her first big role. So she had done, I think, 2 small bit pieces in TV stuff. And then like one other movie where it was kind of, I read it and it sounded like a Lassie knockoff or something, but like.
Is this the girl from Dawson's Creek?
Uh-huh.
Oh, she must have been a child then.
She was like 12.
Okay.
Maybe?
That's what I call child. I don't know about you guys, but.
She's like, she's coming of age. It's funny because she plays the young version of Syl, so she's actually a huge part of the film. Oh. She's the entire first act lead actress in it. So it's really crazy to me. For anybody who doesn't know who Michelle Williams is, Dawson's Creek was her major breakout role, but she's since gone on to be in a ton of stuff like Brokeback Mountain. She's done a lot of indie stuff like Blue Velvet, Wendy and Lucy. And if you don't know her from those, maybe you know her from the 2018 smash hit Venom.
Wow. She's an Oscar winner, I think. So it wasn't for Venom, surprisingly.
Yeah, I think she is. I'm not sure. Maybe for Brokeback.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to, maybe Eric can look that up for us. And then the rest of the cast is pretty interesting. So we've got a group of scientists / people who are hunting her down throughout the rest of the film. And that includes Michael Madsen, who is just in a ton of Quentin Tarantino stuff like Kill Bill, Reservoir Dogs. He's actually, you will have seen him because he's been in 308 roles.
Oh. Dang. Yeah, Michelle Williams has not won she's not won an Oscar. She's been nominated for 4.
Oh, wow.
But won a couple Golden Globes.
I think she's a pretty incredible actress.
She's great.
Take This Waltz broke my heart. Blue Valentine broke my heart. She's very good at breaking my heart.
Good times.
Oh, yes.
And Dawson's.
Yes. And Dawson's so many times, more than once. Spoiler alert, as somebody who's seen every episode except for the season finale or show finale. And then we've got...
Seems like a weird episode to skip if you've seen all of the other ones.
Yeah, I was watching it with somebody else, and then we were like, yeah, we just have the last one to watch together, and then like, we never got to it, so... So
20 years later, we still want to get together to watch that episode.
Just like the cast of the show coming back. Yeah, I think it's supposed to be like later anyway. So this group of scientists also includes, so we've got Michael Madsen, who's playing Preston Lennox. He's basically like the heavy, and he's a detective thug / merc that the Science Institute / government has hired to kill Syl, this creature. Alfred Molina plays Dr. Stephen Arden, who's a kind of, sort of the British guy who can't quite, he's a bumbling man. He's a bumbling man, and he's the anthropologist. Mary Helensberger plays Laura Baker, Dr. Laura Baker, and she's the molecular biologist. And then we have Forrest Whitaker, who plays Dan Smithson, aka the Empath. I don't know why it's weird. He's like psychic and he can read people's minds and emotions around the room, but like it's some made up crazy idea of what this person could be useful for in this role. I mean, Forrest really plays it hard. Like I think he does a good job, but it's such a cheesy, odd like device that every time he's like she's mad, she was hurt. She's mad. And you're like, what is happening?
Keep touching your head.
Yeah.
No.
It's 100% what it feels like. It's like, you got to stop using this guy. He kind of gets more screen time than almost anybody else. And then last but not least, the leader, the person who's running this whole operation, Ben Kingsley, who is the role of Xavier Fitch. Somebody had a lot of fun with these names.
That is one fucking heavy-duty cast for what is basically a B-movie horror flick.
Yes, it is. And I think that was part of the reason I definitely kind of dug this film, and I'll get more into that later. But I thought there was a lot of good working in here. So just to go over this film with you, starts off really bad CGI titling. This is like, hey, guess what's going to come for you in many, many more instances? Probably going to be some bad CGI. Then we look down on a field of SETI dishes, and SETI, which is the search for extraterrestrial something. I've forgotten it now. I used to really care about this when I was in high school.
Yeah, when you say dishes, you're talking about the gigantic radar dishes.
Yes, the big radar dishes that are like out in the middle of the desert.
And then they all lock on a signal dramatically.
Totally. Yeah, and they're the ones out there that we've got searching for alien life. It's great because...
Search for extraterrestrial intelligence, I bet.
Thank you. Yes, I think you're absolutely right. And basically, we get this really cool little text, actually the huge amount of text explaining what SETI is, which is really weird as well. I don't think they needed to do that, but it's kind of a nice shout out for SETI, I guess. Then Utah Lab, Michelle Williams is in, she's kind of in this bell jar situation. She's in this...
reading directly from the script here?
Scene one.
Right?
Scene one, act one. Fade in.
I just didn't want to miss a beat. So Michelle Williams is in basically a glass jar, and Ben Kingsley's looking down on her, and he's just whispering, "I'm sorry." And she's looking up at him like, "What are you doing to me?" And these dudes come in with all these cyanide canisters and just push them up against her, unscrew a thing, push them in, the big tubing, and turn them on. And her room is filled with cyanide. And it's like, uh-oh, they're killing whatever she is. She then goes supersonic, breaks out, runs away, ends up on a train, hitches a ride, kills a few people, and suddenly builds a cocoon and emerges as a beautiful, gorgeous main actress, Natasha Henstridge.
She looks like a supermodel.
It's crazy. Only she's wearing the conductor's uniform of the woman who just she murdered.
Yeah,
so,
not for long.
Not for long. That, I will say, I counted the number of times we saw full frontal on her. It was a minimum of 4. One of which at least was when in a dream sequence, and one at least full frontal nude when she was the monster thing. So
Eric and I had a big long conversation about that once when he counted all the time she had been full frontal also.
Oh, sure. He doesn't remember this.
I have no idea what you're talking about, but all right.
Continue, Vanessa.
Yes. Sure. So anyway, she's now arrived in LA, which means she can kind of take the time to figure out what it is to be a human being. She's wandering around. Basically, everyone in LA is so crazy that they don't notice her crazy behaviors. So, for example, she's stolen the conductor's money and goes and spends it on a wedding dress. She doesn't know what a wedding dress is. She just is like, this is a cool outfit, and is walking around LA in a wedding dress. So that's the first of her many fun outfits. She's learning about humans by watching a lot of TV. So that's kind of fascinating because you get to see this sort of construct that she's putting together of learning how to do things and see things and react to things by watching television and where all the gaps are. So that worked pretty nicely, I felt. So in the meantime, we've got the scientists are put together in a team to go and take her out. They got to go find her and kill her. And what she is, so we as a planet like to send out probes sometimes going, here we are, notice us, love us, alien life. And one alien gets it, and it has like a DNA sequence of humans in it. And they put they put a DNA sequence of theirs in there, and then a third one, which is like kind of a complement of the two. And it's kind of like a friendly, yeah, like, you guys seem cool, we're cool, here's this, try it out.
This is what we'd be if we were cool together.
Yeah, just imagine. So Ben Kingsley has been part of a team that they had something like 22 different little experimental pieces that they used this DNA on, and Michelle Williams was the only one that they let grow to full life. And so they felt like, oh crap, actually this being maybe isn't the right kind of being. Maybe something isn't quite meshing with her and with us and this alien people and with our people. And he's darn right, because her entire role is to basically reproduce as quickly as she possibly can. Their lifespans are very short. So she grows up in just a matter of like months. Her pregnancy is only potentially a few days long. So the scientists are trying to hunt her down and find her before she gets knocked up, which is what she's desperately trying to do. So now we've got this woman, this beautiful woman, running around, taking off her clothes and trying to have sex with everyone she possibly can.
Trying.
And as the film develops, we get to see still in many different phases between human and reptile. And also we get these really cool dream sequences where she's dreaming kind of her species on her home planet, and the way they're just these like monstrous beings in this almost like hellscape, and they're wrapping around each other and like either having sex, which makes her want to have sex, or they're fighting or whatever. Everything seems terrifying. But she keeps waking up from these nightmares being like, oh my God, okay, I gotta go make this happen here, though, obviously.
I am down to fuck now.
Yes. And the scientists are on a ticking clock, because as soon as, like I said, as soon as she gets pregnant and has more kids, or however many reptile babies she has, they're gonna reproduce and basically take over the earth. So it's kind of neat. There's a lot of interesting chase scenes, chasing through a club, chasing through car chase. There's a really insane hostage scene where Syl takes this normal woman hostage. She runs up to her car and says, oh my God, can you help me? And the woman looks at her like, oh, sure. And then you see the woman like tied up to a bed in her own house. And like Syl is like, I'm going to chop off your fingers now. And you're like, what is going on? So it does get pretty intense. Like, I do feel like they really go all the way. The ending. So if you guys don't want to know what happens at the end here, just like how Kelly said, tune this out, do a little hum to yourself. Exactly. Mute us for 30 seconds or so. So they end up in this giant chase scene trying to hunt her down. She fools them once and they think she's dead, but actually she's not. And she's in the sewer system beneath this hotel. I'm sorry, before that, when they think she's dead, she manages to seduce Alfred Molina, and he has sex with her. But he's the runner-up, because she really wanted to have sex with Michael Madsen, but he's busy having sex with Mary Hellenberger. So she goes for like the second choice, and it's clearly like, oh, I guess I have to settle on this one. Ugh.
Look, every guy is second choice to Michael Madsen back in the 90s. True. That was one hot piece of ass there.
True.
Apparently, I personally never saw the greatness in him, really? But
wow,
he's just not my type.
You gonna bite, little doggy?
No, that's not sexy to me. And anyway, so she has managed to impregnate herself. And afterwards, of course, like any good reptile lady trying to get pregnant with a human being, she kills him. So that's exciting. They're underneath the sewer system.
Oh, if only.
And they're trying to track her down. The empath is constantly going, I think she's this way. I think she's this way. And then like there's little bubbles in the water that are popping up. You're like, she's clearly there. You could just follow the bubbles because she has to breathe. She goes and has a baby off in the corner somewhere. So now it's like, oh, not only do we have to kill her, we have to kill the baby. And there's a big standoff, like giant fireball. We're murdering everybody and everything. And nearly everybody gets killed at some point by her. There's tentacle breasts. So her nipples turn into like big, like horrible tentacle creatures. Whole thing is interesting. So
keep talking. I'm almost there.
I do like, so that's basically it for that film. Tagline.
Really? Okay, well, I'm done.
I mean, what more do you want? You got everything. You get everything in this movie. The tagline, I think, is pretty brilliant. It's, if you build it, they will come. Pretty good, guys. Yeah. So many levels.
Oh, yeah. That's so
deep. But a couple of things I really loved about it is the pacing is great. You're constantly stressed the hell out. And you also are rooting for both teams because they're both really likable. Like you want Syl to figure things out. You kind of want her to figure out how to have sex and how to take over, like steal people's cars, and she's just kind of weirdly likable. And of course the science team, there's so many great actors on board. You're just like, yeah, I just want everyone to be happy. This is great. And because you're on that science ticking clock, it really does push the urgency, and it's a pretty believable plot device too. It's not like wacky science that we usually see in a lot of these films where it's complete BS. It makes a lot of sense. It's like, oh, they're on a different timeline, so we have to stop it before it takes over the world. And you can just envision the whole time what's going to happen and why it's important that they get to her. Overall, it's just super fun. There's just a lot of really fun scenes. She's trying to seduce a guy in this club at some point to get impregnated by him, obviously. And a girl's flirting with him and like kind of steals the attention away. And she's like, I'm going to the bathroom. See you soon, hunky dude. And so Syl follows her into the bathroom, and like the girl goes into the stall and Syl's just standing there for a minute and then disappears out. And then we just see an arm go through in behind the stall through the girl's chest. So the jealousy that kind of drives her to have this sort of murderous instinct as well, I think pushes it in a really fun way. I like the SETI shout out, and best of all, I think the thing that's working for this movie the most is the H.R. Geiger involvement.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So he designed Syl. He designs her cocoon. Super clear, super great scene of the conductor walking in and just seeing this mass amount of like viscera and just stuff, just dark, disturbing stuff. All the dream sequences are clearly him. The ways in which it sucks. The CGI sucks. So whatever they thought they were designing, her reptilian form every time is garbage. They should have gone practical. I think that's probably the reason why a lot of people found this movie stupid. And they were kind of right to. It takes a lot of patience to deal with CGI that bad. And I really do wish that they had just full-blown done a monster makeup situation on her. I think the full frontal is a bit much. I think we get it. I don't think we needed as much of it. I think they should have teased it out a little more. Full frontal's fine, just not all the damn time. It's not like I think she has beautiful breasts.
I'll put my pants back on. Jesus, I get it, Vanessa.
I mean, like, look, it's not special if they show it all the time, okay?
I think that can be argued, but
maybe this film isn't for. Maybe that wasn't for me. I guess the empath is cheesy as hell, and it's very distracting after a while. Like watching Forrest Whitaker just be like, I don't know, guys, there's something here all the time is kind of awful. There are a fair amount of super rapey, sleazy dudes in this movie. I felt like that was a bit too much. Like, one would have been fine. And
they all get their comeuppance, though.
They do. But I feel like it's just such a plot device. You can really see through it very easily. Like, oh, well, she can't have sex because this guy's a D-bag. And so she has to wait, and that's because even though we wrote him as really nice in the previous scene, we need her to have that journey for a little bit longer. Like, I just felt like I could see the strings being pulled through a lot of those. But and the nipple tentacles, for me, I don't think they look that good. Just gonna say it. I'm gonna be the one.
It got 3 sequels.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a huge hit.
I mean, I don't think I've seen any of the sequels. Have you?
I have not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, sorry to say I would have been in one of the 31%.
You were not a fan.
What started to bug me after a while in the film, and I haven't revisited it in a long time, so I might be fine with it now, but was, oh, she was just here, darn it. 4 scenes later, oh, she was just here, darn it. Like, just scene after scene of them almost getting her. It's like, twist it up just a little bit, but like I said, I haven't seen it since I saw it in the theaters originally, so it's been a while.
I think I didn't see it until just like 2 years ago or something when it came on Prime was the first time I saw it, and I thought it was pretty bad.
Fine, guys. I'm the only one who's enjoying the 90s over here.
Look,
Whatever.
the whole point of this podcast is to take a movie and argue. You know, a lot of times it's going to be a movie that's not great, and you're arguing for it. I like this instead of you coming in with a movie that you hate and telling everybody about it.
The PSA.
You saw, like I said, I haven't seen it since then. You sold enough going, well, maybe I missed something.
Quite honestly, halfway through this, I was like, boy, this is sounding way better than I remember.
You know, I think there were so many little surprises in it that really pulled me through, like just seeing Michelle Williams, like as a really good actress, even at 12, was just really fun. And watching the H.R. Geiger nightmares, there were little pieces along the way that really filled it up for me. And I do agree, Eric, like having them constantly show up and be like, she was here. How did we miss her? Yeah. And she's literally in the yard. Like the empath doesn't know where she is, but does. But
something
she's like,
here.
Yeah.
Like 2 feet away.
She's looking at us right now fully nude, behind a vague palm, whistling in the wind. Yeah, there is a frustration to that, but I do like the relationship that ends up emerging between the scientists. You get this kind of collaborative cast situation that's pretty fun, and the romance that develops between Madsen character and the female scientist.
Helgenberger.
Helgenberger. Yeah, that was interesting. I was also thrilled that Ben Kingsley was hardly in it because I don't like him that much.
Well, I was going to say the real mystery has to be, what did this producer have on Alfred Molina and Ben Kingsley that he had them in this pretty shitty movie?
Good question. I mean, it's a big budget.
All right, Eric.
Okay, well, the film I have is not a big budget. It definitely was not a hit and is largely unheard of, so it was an interesting one to watch. It's a 1973 Idaho Transfer.
Can't they make it better? They use something besides chocolate.
We get vanilla next week. It's been ordered. Hey, Issa, your sister got here.
Karen, where is she?
She was in your father's office.
I'll see you. Evan, I need 6 more tractors. Where are they?
Tomorrow?
I really need them.
I'll see what I can do. You know your sister got here.
Yeah. Dad and Louis are trying to get it together to secretly transfer a lot of young people into the future. Bypass the eco crisis or whatever it is. Start a new civilization. Daddy can't come, huh? Something to do with the kidneys. Louis says it's curtains for anybody much over 20 to try it. Don't say anything to him about it, okay? Now this is the transfer control unit. The white lights are always on. That indicates that unit has power. These are the activating switches that are thrown in sequence. And then you wait for the corresponding lights to come on. And that means that the unit has been phased or it's ready to go. This is the transfer bar. Just need to press it lightly, but you'll see when I do it, okay? Okay. This red line here, this is the danger line. Anything inside this has to be secured to the transfer grid.
Now, I will admit again to having spent 18 years of my life in Idaho. There's like, oh, an Idaho movie, what the hell? That actually is shot in Idaho and actually all that. So let's check it out. Well, this is another one of those big ones that has no critics' Rotten Tomato score. And 1 point higher, though, than Species. 32 from the audience.
Man, you had a really good experience then.
The budget, however, for this one was $150,000. So
oh my God.
Wow, and a real indie film in the early 70s.
Yep,
Whoa.
It was. It's no real box office to speak of. But I did see an interview with the director, Peter Fonda.
What?
Oh my God.
Where he
Peter
said
Fonda couldn't get more than 130K?
150.
150K?
More than 130. Well, I got a story about that later on that a little bit. But it was the movie. He said whoever distributed made their money back, and he was fine with that because it definitely is a weird pet project. Peter Fonda, director Peter Fonda of such films as Wanda, Nevada, and The Hired Hand. Of course, you probably might know him from acting jobs. It was written by a guy named Thomas Matheson, and this is the only thing he ever wrote as far as film goes. Starring Kelly Bohannon, who was also in the Christian Licorice Store. So,
I'm gonna guess that name is Monahan, but
Bonahan, B-O-H.
Oh, B-O-H?
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know.
And let's see, there's basically everybody's like her that did this and almost nothing else except for Keith Carradine. From Kung Fu and Southern Comfort and The Long Riders showed up in it. The basic storyline is that at some point in the near future, the world is going to destroy itself, they think somehow, because they've developed a time travel system that they jump forward a little bit in time and end up in a decimated world. And instead of really exploring the world, they just assume the entire rest of the world looks the same. So it's like, all right. So they come up with this idea that they're going to, they call it transferring for the time travel. They're going to transfer a group of under 20-year-olds, because if you're over 20 and you transfer, your kidneys go bad and you die. It's like, oh, well, that's oddly specific, but sure.
Wow.
I mean, if you're 20 years old and one day this happens?
I don't know. Maybe there's a gap thing.
I'm calling bullshit.
What? You're calling bullshit on the science of a time traveling movie? You have to be under 20 to go, though. The idea is, and it's very strange, the transfer is very bizarre, where they take off all their clothes but their underwear and a t-shirt, because if they're wearing anything else, apparently it'll meld to you. No metal or anything, but they do have a little lockbox they can put all this stuff into. So when that goes through just fine, but if you're wearing it, it messes you up. So, okay, cool. Why not?
Sure.
And here's a thing that very few people are going to understand, but those that get will appreciate greatly. The transfer special effects, I shit you not, look just like the Dreams in the Witch House from the classic H.P. Lovecraft short that is shown almost every year in The Secret Showing.
Oh.
So
it's just a bunch of really bad effects going on behind that. Bob Hale, I know, will know exactly what we're talking about.
Very limited, but Those that do will know. I'm guessing there was a lot of drugs involved in making this movie. It is oddly watchable. At least I found it oddly watchable. This is not one I'm going to stamp on and go, you got to go watch it, because it is so weird and so 1973 no budget pacing, which means really kind of slow. It starts out, the idea is that one of the ladies who's the master knows everything of how it's supposed to be done. You know, this 19-year-old looking or younger looking woman is going to teach her sister what happens. Well, they go into the future. This older sister falls and dies, and the younger sister goes all catatonic and can't deal with stuff. So as they're trying to bring the future there so they can reproduce and repopulate the earth, there's lots of drama with her not wanting to read the letters her dad's sending through time and all this kind of strangely heavy drama. The acting borders from, I guess, very well praised at the time, naturalistic acting, which means not very good, but actually pretty decent. Keith Carradine, of course, is good. And then there's a couple other actors who are all right. Unfortunately, the main leads are not among them. But once you accept the weird, they have a weird tone and a real pace, but they are consistent. So I'm like, okay, once you get used to that, you kind of just roll with it. They decide at some point that it's time to explore. So two groups go wandering off into the desert of Idaho on the way to Portland, is the city they chose to pick. And I was like, okay, Boise's probably closer, but sure, go for Portland. And they do come across the impossible while they're going through this abandoned area, a group of abandoned cars with unbroken windows.
I've never seen that in a post-apocalyptic world.
Exactly, yes. They were very dusty, though. Well, another thing that hurts the performances a little bit is the whiny teenagers. But come on, whiny teenagers in movies, it's just kind of how it works.
It's that naturalistic acting.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. They come across a group of wild survivors who apparently are what they think is the way people have developed throughout the years, and they're sort of like devolved. I did like the weird line where they're, how did they survive? What do they eat? Wild potatoes. Like, I think you could have just gone with potatoes.
I was going to say, boy, those potatoes are wild.
Watch out, potato.
But the grand moment of why is this never revisited again is when they find a gun and ammunition. So you're going, oh, that's going to come up to tragedy in the future and is never mentioned again.
Chekhov's ignored weapon.
That's right. The big tragedy, here we go into spoiler territory, folks. So if you are interested in this, and bless you if you are, because it's a hard sell. The whole idea of going into the future was that these young people would then reproduce and repopulate and all that. Turns out they find out that when you transfer, you're turned sterile. And one of the girls thinks she has become pregnant because she hasn't been told that. And everybody around her is sitting around going, no, you're not. And somebody tells her she's pregnant, and she goes wandering off alone into the woods or the
tell
desert.
her she's sterile.
Yeah, everybody's sterile, so there's no way she has a kid. So she goes wandering off into the woods and the desert and stumbles across, this is the end of the movie, so spoiler again, a running car with people driving it. The car stops. She goes forward like she thinks she's going to get helped. They grab her, stick her in the trunk, which is a very odd-looking trunk, shut the trunk, get back in the car, and the little kid in the back's going, so that was another one of the people? Yeah. They fuel our car, right? Yeah. What happens if they all run out? What do we do then? I don't know, son. And the movie ends.
Whoa!
This is some M. Night Shyamalan bullshit.
Yes, it was.
That logic is insane.
So so back to why, if you really love sci-fi 70s films, this has a lot of that look. The machine has that feel. They've got all the weird, overly giant color or lit up buttons and all that. So it looks right. It's so a couple notes on it. Peter Fonda wasn't sure about it, but in his interview, so take this for what you will, he said his wife read the script and upon finishing it had a panic attack, and he said, "I got to do that movie."
I don't think that's a good sign, sir. That script was so bad that she freaked out.
Oh no, she loved it.
Sure.
Yeah. And the naturalistic actress was hired when Peter Fonda saw her seating people at a restaurant. And he thought the way she controlled the crowd and never lost her cool would really be a neat thing she could bring to the role. I'm like, okay.
Nice. And she acted in what after this again?
Exactly, yes. The, what was it, the licorice thing or something like that?
Oh, right.
Christian licorice. So some of the fun for me as well was, as I said, I was shot in Idaho. This was shot a lot on Craters of the Moon in Idaho, which is famous for mistakenly being used as what they thought the surface of the moon would look like. So a lot of the astronauts trained there, trying out the various gear and the vehicles they'd use on the moon. Of course, they got there and it was not even remotely like it. Fonda said the film was in release for 3 weeks when the distributor went bankrupt. So I'm not sure how they made their money back. So he said both of these things in the same 10-minute interview. The banks had the film for years. And he says he still has the rights publicly. People say it's in public domain. I watched it on YouTube. Unprofessional actor is generally panned by most critics, but at the time, it was praised for being true to real life. It's the only film he directed that he does not appear in, of the 4 films he directed. Principal shooting took place in Arco, Idaho. Arco, Idaho is the county seat for Butte County, Idaho, with a population of 995 people.
Ooh. The last those 5 couldn't quite make it to 1,000.
Come on, you guys.
Everybody,
the population.
Have sex. We need 5 more.
So it was, I enjoyed watching it. It's not going to be added to my collection or anything, but I would say if you're a 70s sci-fi enthusiast, you probably will find something interesting about this film. And luckily, it's not particularly long. It's like an hour and 80 minutes or something. So it's not.
So you kept saying Keith Carradine, but then you said Kung Fu. So is it Keith Carradine or David Carradine?
Oh, sorry. No, it was Keith Carradine.
Okay.
Was his brother?
There are so many Carradines that it's ridiculous.
Yes, it's sort of like the Baldwins.
They were the 70s Baldwins.
Yeah.
Baldwins. Well, cool. How the fuck did you find this? Is this just doing research on weird science gone wrong?
Yeah, just looking through science movies gone wrong. And I don't know, I mean, I like I've said before in the past, I never want to move back and live there again, but there's still that connection to, an Idaho thing. Let's check it out.
Right.
It's by Peter Fonda. What?
Yeah,
okay.
It's interesting to me that he thought enough of the script that he had to direct it, but not enough of it to try and get more than $150,000 to make it.
Oh, I forgot to mention, the guy who brought it to him basically said, I have $150,000. We can make this script right now.
Oh.
Are you in? So
yes.
He and his wife read it and they went, what the hell, let's go. So they didn't have to try to find money. The guy came with it.
Yeah. So. Interesting. All right, guys, good choices. Eric, I believe that means that next week is on you.
Yes, that is right. So we're going a little more specific again, back to the weirdness of pizza in film and those kind of concepts. So I figure let's go for a film that prominently features a basement. Doesn't have to be the whole thing, just has a important scene or element that comes from a basement or a cellar.
Oh, I love it. I'm really excited.
I can dig. Yeah. Okay, so everybody, that's what we're doing next week is basement horror, basement evil, basement genre. Thanks so much to everybody. Bob Hale, as always, commenting. Craig Mullins, of course. Rob Corliss, who did our logo and who texted me and said, "Hey, thank you for the nice shout out on this week's episode, especially since you were not very kind to Australians in the episode prior." I was like, "Oh, shit. Sorry, man." But we really appreciate all the love we've been getting, and I know everybody's got to be just as frustrated as we all are with this whole stay-at-home stuff. So hang in there, keep washing your hands. We'll get through this here pretty quickly. And
I have another appearance if you're not already bored of listening to me, or if you want to hear the wonderful Tony. Come on, Anthony.
Anthony James K.
Speaking. I guested on the worst movie of the year podcast again with him about a movie called Septic Man, which I didn't hate as much as Tony did, but let me tell you, Tony will tell you everything you need to know about why this movie is not good, and it's impressive. So.
I've only experienced Tony talking in great length about movies he likes. I can't imagine him railing against something. That's just...
It's similar.
A lot of passion there, I imagine.
Yes.
All right, everybody. Thanks. One last note, Danny Williford, I hope you get your fez soon. He saw our fezzes, and he's thrilled.
Nice.
So we'll be back, just in a couple of days with a very groovy short Aeons episode, and then a regular episode in a week. So
cool.
See you later.
See ya.
Our podcast is recorded at Eric's house, and Vanessa's house, and Kelly's house, and is engineered and edited by Eric Mordred. Our theme music is Strange Aeons Part 1 by the band Nightshade, and is used with permission. Find Strange Aeons Radio on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and wherever fine podcasts are found.